Greetings everyone! This is the second episode of my Gold Silver Crystal competitive guide. If you didn't watch the first one, where I talk about the mechanics of GSC that are relevant in competitive play, I suggest you to do it now, unless you are already familiar with them. So in this episode, I'm going to address some general things about the GSC metagame that apply to all tiers. I want to do it like this, so in the next episodes I can analyze each individual tier and show the main threats of them. So let me know your opinion on this subject in the comments below. Before I continue, I have two mechanics I have to address that I didn't in the first episode. The first one is you cannot encore sleep talk. If you try to do it, it will simply fail. On simulators, I think it is wrongly implemented. I'm guessing that on Pokémon Showdown, recently they have fixed that bug, because I have reported it on the forums, and they think I corrected it. I'm not sure though. Then the second mechanic is the critical hits. Now, they work a bit differently in this generation. I don't know exactly how to explain it. Probably I'm not the best person to do that, so I'll leave a link in the description that will tell you how the critical hit mechanics work. Since critical hits is something that you cannot control, it's not that important, but so you don't have to be surprised about the damage you see when a critical hit happens. You better read those lines. Now I'm going to tell you which tiers exist in this competitive generation and give a brief summary about them. First, we have OU, and as you all know, OU is a standard tier in each generation, and so it is here. Then we have Ubers. Ubers in this generation only includes 5 Pokemon that are classified as that, but it's a playable meta since you can mix Ubers with OU Pokemon, and yeah, you can play with that. It's more bulky than the OU meta, but it's also better in offense, which balances it out. Now UU comes next, which it's a more fast-paced metagame than the OU one, since the bulk is fairly less, but stall tactics are still possible in this environment. Little Cup is by far the fastest metagame in this generation, since only level 5 Pokemon in their base forms and are capable of evolving are allowed. It's important to note that in some times the Chansey and Scyther are banned from this tier, but there are no general rules established for Little Cup. So it depends on the players. If they agree to not use Chansey and Scyther, they don't. But if they want to use them, they can still use them. It's something that both players must agree on. Next, we have two special tiers. One of them is NU. Now, Smogon doesn't have a NU tier list on their website, as I may have mentioned in some NU battles I have posted already. But we have this list that we took from a forum, and it contains basically the less usable Pokemons of UU in terms of overall potential. It's a fun tier, and if you haven't tried it, I recommend you to play it. It's really fun to do it, and it's really competitive too. And finally we have Borderline. Now Borderline is a ban list for UU, but it can be played as a separate meta as well. It's similar to OU, but the bulk is considerably less, since you don't have those big guys like Suicune or Snorlax or Miltank. As you know, each competitive environment has their clauses or restrictions, if you want to call them like that, and GSC is no different. So let's address all the clauses that are present in this gen. Now first, Sleep Clause. It's pretty straightforward. Only one Pokemon is allowed to be put to sleep on a team. Self-induced sleep due to rest is excluded from this clause. But if you play Stadium 2, it automatically enforces Sleep Clause even with rest, so keep that in mind. Freeze Clause only applies to Stadium 2, Since if you play by the cartridge games, it's impossible to control freezes from happening other than banning moves capable of that altogether. But that would be ridiculous, you know. We would basically don't allow players to use moves like Ice Beam or Blizzard or Ice Punch just because they have a chance of freezing. That would affect the game itself a lot. But since the freeze chance is only 10%, it's not that big of a deal. But in Stadium 2 it's automatically enforced, so that's the thing. Then you have Species Clause, which is self-explanatory. Evasion Clause, which all know evasion moves are banned, like Double Team, Minimize. Keep in mind that you can still use moves at lower accuracy, like Sand Attack or Mud Slap, as well as the item Bright Powder. Then we have One Hit KO Clause, which is basically, you know, you cannot use one hit KO moves. The Guillotine, Fissure, and Horn Drill. Then you have a special clause that only applies to Gen 2, which is the Sleep Perish Trap clause. Now basically what this restriction says is that you cannot have in the same moveset a combination of Mean Look or Spiderweb coupled with Perish Song and a sleep inducing move like Hypnosis or Sleep Powder or whatever, or level it is, yeah. Because all the other individual combinations like Sleep plus a trapping move, Perish Song plus a trapping move, or Sleep inducing move plus Perish Song are allowed. Those individual combinations are allowed, but the three of them, trapping, Perish Song, Sleep, the combination of the three is not allowed on a single moveset. Because it's basically you need a lot of luck to beat that combination of moves, and it's not really healthy for the competitive game. You can also trap a Pokemon and then baton pass to a Pokemon with Perish Song and a Sleep Inducing move. That's perfectly allowed. Now I'm going to address some aspects that you need to deal with in all GSC metas in general. Now, first of all, rest. Yes, it's common. A lot of Pokemon will use rest. It's viable since you have max EVs on every stat. You can actually take hits while you are sleeping due to rest. Not for all Pokemon though, there are still Pokemon that are fragile and which rest is not really a viable move and just wastes a slot. On the other hand, forcing an opponent to rest can help you. You can capitalize on that. In fact, some strategies involve into inflicting damage to a Pokemon where it is forced to rest, so you can then predict that rest or use that rest in your favor to force a favorable matchup and force your opponent to switch without burning any sleep turns. All is part of strategy in GSC. You can also use an opponent's Pokemon resting as a chance for you to set up your own sweeper. Being able to achieve a 3-hit KO is essential to not be rest looped by an opponent's Pokemon. Rest loop it, it's basically resting, burning the 2 sleep turns and then resting over again and just stall you out with this process. Now Sleep Talk, a very controversial move, but you need to keep in mind that it hits rest. Period. There is no way to work around that, but it hits rest. It's actually not a bad thing. This allows for Rest Talk, the combination of Rest with Sleep Talk, to be more valuable as a defensive measure. And it's not unbeatable by any means. Rest Talk can give Sweeper some setup opportunities, or can make you lose if you rely too much on it. Because remember, if you use Sleep Talk, it's a 33% chance to select each individual move, and one of those moves can be Rest. And in case you have lost some HP, Rest recovers you back, but you have to sleep for 2 additional turns. So you have to think, strategize to play around Sleep Talk instead of complaining that it is broken, because you know what, it's not. Now, moves in this gen don't do a ridiculous amount of damage. It's not like the newer gens where you can basically lose 60% with a not very effective move sometimes. Once again, because you have max EVs on everything, so nothing really dies right off the bat, except with super effective moves that hit on weak defenses or hit for 4 times super effective damage. But since it's like that, you need to work for your kills. Get some chip damage here and there, set up at the right time. There is no such thing as like set up and sweep an entire team, except for some cases like belly drummers or so. But even belly drummers need to be played accordingly and have the right support in order to be able to sweep teams. Stall. Oh boy, stall. How many times I have heard people saying GSC is just stall. But yeah, you know, stall strategies exist, and there are many things in this competitive generation revolving all around stall. But on the other hand, stall is also a feeling you get when you play this, because you are used to Pokemon dying fast and all that, and then you come here and you see moves doing like 30% damage usually, and Pokemon taking their time to being KO'd. And then you say, okay, it's just stall, stall, stall. But no, stall exists, but offense does also exist. It all depends on your team building and your playstyles. Because you know, even in the newer generations, if you build a team consisting of 6 walls, the match would usually take forever. So if you do the same thing here, the match will take forever. So don't complain when it happens. You build a team like that, you have to deal with it. And because even stall teams in this gen have 1 or 2 offensive-oriented Pokemon, usually a wall breaker, to ensure that opposing stall teams don't outstall your own stall team, and thus leading to 500-turn matches. Now, the point of sacrificing Pokemon in this generation, Gold, Silver, Crystal, you don't sack a Pokemon as often as you do in other gens. Sometimes even a Pokemon with a low amount of HP can make a comeback with leftovers recovery or with a well-timed rest. So you have to read your current game situation and decide if it's really necessary to sack something in order to bring another Pokemon in without any harms. Because there are situations where it is needed. You have to sacrifice a Pokemon with low HP so you can bring something in without taking any damage on the switch in, and thus you can continue to work for your victory. So keep in mind, read the situation of the game accordingly and use your best judgment to see if it's necessary to sacrifice a Pokemon or not. Now we move on to items used in competitive play. As you know, Generation 2 was the generation where the held items feature was introduced, but it's also the generation where there are less competitive viable held items. Leftovers is the most common of them. About 95% of Pokemon use it in competitive play. But there are other items that can be used and have a small niche roles in some sets. One example is the Mint Berry, the Miracle Berry, and even attack boosting items like Polka Dot Bow or Black Belt. And there's also an item exclusive to GSC, which is the Berserk Gene. Berserk Gene is a kind of high risk, high reward item, because as soon as you get in, it is consumed and raises your attack to +2 immediately and confuses you. It's like you enter the field and apply a swagger on yourself. But the confusion from Berserk Gene never wears off. So until you switch, which would ruin the +2 boost, you basically have to gamble on that 50% on each move you make. But if you are lucky with Berserk Gene, you can actually do some great damage, because you get like a Swords Dance immediately upon entering the field. You can also do like put the Berserk Gene on a Pokemon with Baton Pass, and then Baton Pass the +2 to another Pokemon that has like a Miracle Berry or a Bitter Berry to cure confusion, and then you have like a +2 without any confusion involved. But it's a bit gimmicky, but hey, it's there. About spikes and, you know, the spikes game, keeping spikes, removing spikes. You know, switches are a big part of Gold, Silver, Crystal, since you always want to try to force a favorable matchup in order to keep your momentum going. So keeping up spikes can be very important for various strategies. That 12.5% per switch in can put many Pokemon in 2-hit KO or 3-hit KO range. That's why poison in combination with spikes or even poison on its own is also good, since it stacks up more residual damage on the switch-ins. However, keep in mind that spikes and poison are not mandatory for any team. Because if that team doesn't use them as part of the strategy and just splashes them in, it's usually a team slot or a move slot that it's completely wasted, and you could put another thing there instead. But if a team uses spikes as their core strategy, then it's vital to keep spikes on the field. A way of keeping spikes on your opponent's side of the field is to use a spin blocker, of course, but also to apply pressure on your opponent's Pokemon that's rapid spinning, like using Pursuit for an example. That works well on Starmie, which is a common rapid spinner in OU. But also delivering damage when the spinner is switching in, or even explode on it if you have the chance, can also do the job. This concludes the episode, so I hope you all enjoyed and found this helpful. Let me know what you think with likes and feedback. And as usual, take care of yourselves and see you next time.